Hi, everybody. We're going to talk about global winds. Now, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to kind of show you some things visually with this. Hopefully, you did the pre-test on the Chromebook. I want you to keep that screen open. FYI, you should not be clicking on other tabs, trying to sneak into games and all that stuff. Like, this is a very important part of weather. Like, this will help you understand a lot of what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks will actually explain why weather patterns and air masses and fronts travel the way they do. And a lot of things will make sense. Like you'll be able to watch the weather and say, oh, that's why that's happening. A lot of things it'll make sense. Okay. So we're going to talk about the global winds. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a big blue circle. There's my circle. All right, that circle represents the Earth, okay? So then I'm going to draw on this just to kind of help you. This is called a compass rose. All right. And then north, south, east, west. All right, so north, south, east, and west, okay? So that's just going to kind of help us so you know which direction we're heading with the winds, okay? So this is what I want you all to do. We're going to label our Earth in degrees of latitude. So I want everyone to put your arm up vertically, okay? So latitude is the distance measured from north to south, okay? Latitude's north to south. The lines go horizontally across on the map, all right? So I'm going to divide the world in half, all right? I'm going to cut the world in half, all right? There's my world cut. Actually, I'm going to do something different. Use a different tool. There we go. All right, so I just cut the world in half, all right? So I'm going to put a 0 right here. So that line, all right. Okay, so now the Earth is divided into two hemispheres, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Now I'm going to divide the northern hemisphere and I'll divide them into 3 equal parts the best I can. So here's 1 part. Here is 2 parts. All right. So I have 30 degrees here, 60 degrees here, and at the top is 90 degrees, all right? Now I'm going to divide my southern hemisphere into 3 equal parts as well. 1, 2, and 3, all right? And then I have 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and at the South Pole, I'm going to have 90 degrees, all right? So you should notice that the northern and southern hemisphere mirror each other. Now I'm going to put a green circle in between in the northern hemisphere, in between the 30 and 60 degrees. All right, so I'm going to put that green circle right there. We're going to talk about that green circle later. Okay. So between 0 degrees and 30 degrees, in the Western Hemisphere, that area is known as the trade winds, okay? So I'm going to type the word trade winds right here. So the trade winds are right here, okay? The trade winds are right here. And I'm going to write that there. In between in between 30 and 60 degrees is the prevailing westerlies. That's in between 30 and 60 degrees. And then in between 60 and 90 degrees is the polar easterlies. Make sure I spelled that right. There we go. The polar easterlies is, I'm going to move that up here so it shows up a little better. All right. It's the polar easterlies. Okay. So now below the equator, it'll actually it'll actually be the same thing. Okay. So between 0 and 60, just call out real quick. What's in between 0 and 60? Say it out loud. Right. The trade winds. All right. How about in between 30 and 60? Prevailing westerlies. That's right. And go ahead and call out in between 60 and 90. Exactly, the polar easterlies. All right. So now we're going to talk about the direction of these winds. Okay. We're going to actually start with the prevailing westerlies, and those are probably the most important ones we talk about today. The prevailing westerlies go from the west to the east. Okay. So they start over in the west. So for us, the winds would be originating from the Pacific Ocean, and they would come all across North America all the way to here. So I'm going to put some arrows here to signify that they go from west to east. All right. And then the polar easterlies. Now, notice they're called easterlies. That means they start in the east. So they go from east to west. And then the trade winds. Now, the trade winds have a couple of different names. They're primarily called the trade winds because back in the really 1800s, when we didn't have motors on boats, they used sails. And the sails are what carried goods on boats from the Europe, Africa, over into North America and South America. So they would use the trade winds to get them there. That's why they call them the trade winds, because all the trade went that way. They're also known as the prevailing easterlies. So they go from east to west as well. All right. So then, of course, the same is with the winds in the southern hemisphere. They go the same direction. So the prevailing westerlies in the southern hemisphere go from west to east. All right. So remember, prevailing westerlies, west to east. All right. Now let's talk about this circle. So everything we have discussed about global winds impact our weather. So thinking about how global winds impact our weather where we are. So we are located in that green circle that I drew earlier. So that green circle represents Charlotte, North Carolina, the United States, and North America. These are the primary winds that are over our part of the world. Charlotte, North Carolina, United States, North America. Any places mentioned there are affected by the prevailing westerlies, the winds that move from west to east. That means typically weather patterns, rain, fronts, air masses start in the west, move to the east. Now, their direction is kind of altered by the jet stream. We'll talk about the jet stream later. All right. So just a quick recap, really quick. There are three major global winds in the world: the prevailing westerlies, the prevailing easterlies, and the trade winds. The prevailing westerlies go from west to east. That's really the ones you need to remember. The others go from east to west, but the prevailing westerlies go from west to east. So you can kind of see real quick, go away. You can see real quick this drawing. You can see the prevailing westerlies go from west to east. Those are the main visual of the global winds. This is a good way to help you remember. Prevailing westerlies are we. We, as in me and you, we live in the prevailing westerlies. And we, like that pig riding in the car, having the time of his life, he's saying we. So remember, we, west to east, prevailing westerlies. Trade winds are ooh. So, like Elf thinking that's hot cocoa and he's drinking coffee, ew, that's the trade winds and the polar easterlies. So to look at these questions again real quick, just to make sure we understand how the correct answers and what they are. So I'm just gonna get a little check mark here. All right. So which global winds are closest to the equator? That is the trade winds. Which global wind patterns are over Charlotte, North Carolina? Prevailing westerlies. Which global wind patterns are over the North Pole? Prevailing easterlies. Which global wind patterns are responsible for the weather that is over the United States? Prevailing westerlies. In which direction does weather travel over the United States? Remember, west to east. All right. Click my drawings. Pause share. Okay. So now I want you guys to look at this question. I'm going to read it to you. I want you to think for a minute and just kind of internalize that letter. And then I will show you the answer here in a moment. Which is the best explanation for how air masses move across the United States? A. Prevailing westerlies move air masses from west to east across the United States, but may be deflected by the jet stream. B. Trade winds move air masses from west to east across the United States. C. The jet stream moves air masses from the Pacific Ocean across the United States. D. The warm air of the Gulf Stream causes air masses to move from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. All right. I'm going to just kind of sit here quietly for 1 minute and you come up with the best answer that you can and go. All right. Hopefully you came up with the best answer. So we remember, so just looking at the options here and what's important, we see the words prevailing westerlies. Right away, I know those are the global winds that affect us in North Carolina and in the United States. And I do know that the weather moves from west to east. Now, we didn't talk a lot about the jet stream today, but we will later. The jet stream is primarily responsible for the way weather patterns move across the United States. All right. So that is it for me. I believe the next part is your exit ticket. So you'll be instructed in a moment to do your exit ticket. All right. Good luck, and I will see you later.